Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Lincoln Riley, USC kicking off the 2024 college football season with a massive matchup Sunday night against LSU. Want to take a deeper dive into this football game from a USC perspective and, talk about a few things that I think USC can have success with against LSU Sunday night. Now, we're going to be doing really the same exact thing with LSU from their standpoint, but really excited to kind of get into a little bit of the deeper weeds into this matchup. Now, before we get into it, as always, just want to say thank you to you guys. And there was a ton of support for the game prediction, the game breakdown we did for USC LSU earlier in the week. The USC fans, y'all continue to show a ton of love, a ton of support to the boys. We appreciate y'all. If you guys do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Much more importantly, I know a lot of USC fans have dug into this matchup, would love to hear some of your big keys for this USC program against LSU. Without further ado, let's get into this one. I want to start on the defensive side of the football. I think that's where we have probably the most question marks heading into this 2024 season. Obviously, D'Anton Lynn taking over this defense. Now, you look at LSU, their star left tackle, Will Campbell, came out, was talking to the media yesterday and said, it ain't no secret. We're going to be running the football against USC. That is something we expected, right? With Jaden Daniels moving on to the NFL, with how good LSU's offensive line is going to be, we expect this LSU team to run the football a lot in the 2024 season, specifically against the USC defense that ranked, 124th, stopping the run last year. Now, we expect this USC defense to be significantly improved on the defensive side of the football, not only the transfer portal additions, but I think more importantly, D'Anton Lynn coming over and taking over this USC defense. I think my biggest key to this football game is loading the box on defense. I don't know if many of you guys watched that Georgia Tech Florida State game. Our big key for Florida State was to run the football against Georgia Tech. That was very bad against the run in 2023. Georgia Tech knew what Florida State was going to do. How do you answer some of those questions? Georgia Tech just started putting 7-8 guys in the box. Said, all right, if you want to run the football, you are going to be running the football against numbers. We are just going to throw bodies around the line of scrimmage and stop that run game. And it worked. I mean, Florida State had a good first two drives and then struggled to run the football the rest of the way. And, Florida State couldn't really capitalize pushing the ball down the field. Now, you look at this matchup and say, we like these USC cornerbacks, right? You look at John Humphrey, you look at the Carlos Nicholson and Jalen Smith and Greedy Vance and say, we're probably comfortable leaving those cornerbacks on islands. Now, that's not disrespectful to LSU's wide receiver room, which is going to be a very good unit. But you look at maybe one of the bigger mismatches in this football game would be LSU's offensive line, which I think is one of, if not the best unit in all of college football, against the USC defensive line that we think is better, but probably still has some question marks. One of the best things you can do to kind of answer some of those questions, say, hey, Kelly Arnold, a guy that played over 300 snaps in the tackle box last year at Oregon State, we are going to walk you into the tackle box. We're going to add another body against the run and kind of trust our cornerbacks on islands. When you're playing an LSU defense that is as dynamic and as prolific as they are, you kind of have to pick your battles. And if there was a battle and I'm D'Anton Lynn and I'm picking my cornerbacks, which I have a lot of confidence in. I brought two of them over in the transfer portal against these LSU wide receivers. So I think the number one key here, load the box. Do not let LSU kind of control the pace of this football game and control the time possession. The best way to lose a football game is if you can't stop the run. Because one, they're moving the football on you with the ground game, but more importantly, your offense that we think is going to put up a lot of points is sitting on the sideline, not being able to score points. So LSU loading the box, key number one. Going into two, and again, it's really hard to pick holes in this LSU offense because I do think they're going to be really good. Winning on the inside with the pass rush, you look at the LSU tackles, Emory Jones and Will Campbell, those are two guys that are probably going to go in the first round of the NFL draft in the next 6 months. I think the edge rushers can have some success, but that's probably not the particular battle that you're going to go play. I think the maybe the quote-unquote uncertain part of this LSU offensive line is you got a sophomore center that hasn't really started much football in his college football career, DJ Chester. Look, I think DJ Chester is going to be good, but this is the first big moment that this kid has played at the college football level. What I'm doing is, hey, Bear Alexander, we might just put your head up on the center. We might be firing Mason Cobb or Easton Mascarenas, Arnold, two linebackers that have in the past been very successful blitzing those A and B gaps. Try to manufacture your pass rush from the inside. Because again, you look at the LSU offensive tackles and say, Will Campbell, Emory Jones, we know they're really good football players. We might have some question marks about LSU's interior offensive line, especially with a young center that's getting his first career start. If I'm USC, I'm trying to attack the inside of this offensive line, particularly that center position. Again, I think when you're going up against an LSU offense that is this good, you got to pick your battles. You got to try to find the matchups that might favor this USC defense and go at it. I think it's loading the box, trusting your cornerbacks, and I think more importantly, trying to manufacture your pass rush on the inside where you have a guy in Garrett Nussmeier who is a solid athlete, but he ain't no Jaden Daniels. So if you can get disruptive in that pocket, Garrett Nussmeier is a quarterback that wants to operate from the pocket. If you force him to kind of have a muddy pocket, try to start extending plays, that's probably where Garrett Nussmeier is least dynamic. Going over to the offensive side of the football, I think the number one key for me is playing with 4 wide receivers. And I think we've talked about this a lot in the offseason. This has very little to do with me not liking the tight end position. It has a lot more with me loving the wide receivers, specifically the 4 sophomores, and Deuce, Jacoby, Zachariah, and Mekhi Lemon. I think this could match up well against LSU for a couple of different reasons. One, if you're USC, you're getting your best football players on the field, which is when you're playing the sport of college football, that's always a good thing. But I think secondly, if you play 4 wide receivers and kind of spread out this LSU defense, one, they did not tackle in space very well last year, but more importantly, it kind of gets Harold Perkins outside of the tackle box. You look at Harold Perkins, where he's probably the best player on this, not probably, he is the best player on this LSU defense. Where is Harold Perkins most dynamic? It's around the line of scrimmage. It's getting after the passer. If you play 4 wide receivers, take a tight end off the field, you're forcing Harold Perkins to play a little bit more off the line of scrimmage, play a little bit more in space, and that's probably the best way you neutralize a player like Harold Perkins. So again, going back to matchups, one, we're getting our best football players on the field in these wide receivers. But I think more importantly, you're kind of doing your part in neutralizing probably the biggest game wrecker on this LSU defense. And I think finally, got to be able to run the football in a light box. This is something that I think we'll see USC go to, a lot more in the 2024 season, where you look at USC last year, they ran the football relatively effectively, right? 4.8 yards per carry. That was 30th in the country. They only ran the football 42% of the time. That was 125th because you had a quarterback like Caleb Williams. With Miller Moss at quarterback, a guy that we believe in, but you're probably going to lean on the run game more with an offensive line that I think is more put together to run the football and move bodies off the line of scrimmage. If you look at LSU, they probably will be playing with 2 high safeties to try to respect what USC can do at the wide receiver room. You got to have a big game from Woody Marks. And you look at keys to winning this football game, I think it's, both teams are going to try to establish the run, keep the opposing offense off the field. I think LSU is going to give a light box because they probably have more question marks in their secondary than they do in their front 7, although that might be a question mark too. And they want to try to keep USC from manufacturing those explosive plays that Lincoln Riley is going to try to find. And so if LSU is going to give you that light box and you split out your 4 wide receivers out wide, you're probably going to be running into a light box, 5 or 6 guys. USC has to have success there. And you brought in a guy like Woody Marks, who's had good games against LSU in it back to his career at Mississippi State. That's, probably one of the things that if you're USC, you're probably trying to attack. Now, to kind of finish off this episode, I want to talk about my most important players in this football game. I think it starts with your cornerbacks, John Humphreys, DeCarlos Nicholson, Greedy Vance, Jalen Smith, whoever it is going to be for USC. I think you got to trust those cornerbacks to win on islands, because I really do think USC is going to load the tackle box and try to prevent LSU from just running the football and chunking them up on the ground. And so if you're going to load your box, if you're going to walk Achille Arnold into that tackle box, you got to trust your cornerbacks to win those one-on-one matchups on the outside. So massive games from both cornerbacks. I look at Greedy Vance at nickel and say, hey, Greedy Vance is going to play a lot. At least I expect him to play a lot. You're going to need production from Greedy Vance in the run game. It's something that he wasn't great at Florida State. He's going to need to be an exceptional run support nickel defender. And then finally, Woody Marks. I think Woody Marks is going to have some looks. I think they're going to ride Woody Marks hard. He's the most experienced running back. They brought him in the transfer portal for a reason. If LSU is going to give a light box, we kind of trust this USC offensive line to maybe move a little bit off the line of scrimmage. Got to have Woody Marks having a big football game, whether he's running the football, whether he's getting utilized out of the backfield. This could be a real, X factor for this USC offense. Those are my keys for USC beating LSU. Going to be a really fun game to talk about. We're going to be a really fun game to break down live Sunday night. We'll cut it there. Appreciate you guys rocking with the fellas. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all